Welcome, everyone. It's Larry Johnson, your host for A Principles Voices. And today I have a wonderful person I want you to meet. Her name is Rose Maruru, and I hope I got that right. And Rose is living in Dakar, or she's in Dakar today, and she's involved all through that part of the world. And the thing that struck me about Rose, and we'll be talking about this, is that she understands the link between philanthropy and civil society, that it's a synthesis, that it creates growth and understanding and stability in a community. And that's her mission in life. So I want to welcome Rose. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
So Rose, rather than mash it up, can you tell the audience sort of officially your current sort of affiliation, your title, the organization you represent?
Sure. So I am the CEO of EPIC Africa, and EPIC stands for Enhancing Philanthropic Impact across Africa, because that's our focus. Based in Dakar, Senegal. We were founded in 2017, and we're a nonprofit organization really working to fill some of the critical gaps in the African civil society and philanthropy sector. So we collect, collate, catalog, and share data on what organizations exist, what do they do, where are they, what impact are they having, but also then use that data to draw out insights about what's really going on in the sector. So knowledge. So we turn that data into knowledge that can then inform both organizations themselves, as well as those that seek to support them with their institutional funders or individual donors.
So then you're really sort of a meeting house between well-meaning organizations and those who support them. You're sort of that meeting place, and you provide that information. Is that correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. We, as I said, there's this gap, right? So we are connectors, and that's a good way to describe us, to connect organizations with each other, but also connect organizations with potential supporters. And the more they learn about each other and have spaces and mechanisms to connect, we think the more effective philanthropy and civil society can be, because ideally we are working towards the same goal, right?
Yes.
To do more good in the world, right? So we're trying to remove some of the barriers that prevent that from happening in ways and scale that it should be happening.
Yeah, I want to address something you said that I think is so important. You talked about removing barriers. You didn't mention developing potential. Potential is there. It's there. It needs to be connected and opened up. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. And for us, one of the motivating factors that led to the founding of EPIC Africa was, again, lived experience. I have worked in this sector for too many decades now, and both in global philanthropy. I will not mention how many. So I've spent a good part of my career working for international NGOs, both in Africa and in other continents. I've worked in Yemen, worked in Egypt, the Gambia, Senegal, the US, and it's just sort of that collective observations, really, and experience, hands-on experience and observations of how this sector works and kind of the dysfunctions that exist. If you think of this space as a market, there's just all kinds of market failures, if you will, lots of asymmetry of information. People don't know what to find each other. And we think that this reduces the impact that our civil society has and philanthropy has. So we think that by bringing more visibility, because again, lived experience, we know there are lots of amazing groups doing amazing work on this continent, but with very little visibility, even locally, that people don't know what our sector does. When we get asked, what is the impact of this sector, say in the country where I live now, it's difficult to say. I can talk about EPIC Africa, but it's hard to quantify sort of the collective impact. And we think that this is one of the factors that make it difficult for the sector to be resourced and supported in the way that it needs to be, at the scale that it needs to be?
I want to address something that I know our listeners are thinking about, and that is getting beyond some of the common stereotypes that, for instance, an organization in Africa will often assume sort of the poor stepchild role. I'm sort of I can't expect much, so I'm not going to ask much. Then on the reverse side, it's the investors who think that everyone that approaches them is the proverbial Nigerian prince with an inheritance. It's that back and forth. You know what I'm talking about, don't you? And
Yeah.
so I imagine that some of your work deals with dispelling this notion, both on the nonprofit side, giving them a sense of understanding what their real potential is, and then on the donating and investing side, that yes, there are real, serious, legitimate opportunities out there.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the whole point around, generating evidence and in terms of stories, in terms of, data to indeed start to dispel some of the very negative narratives about, what your African civil society organization looks like or does. So in collecting data also, then what we're helping to do is, I don't like the word vet, but in a way, yes. Like, these are legitimate organizations. This is not just legally, but legitimate in terms of they're serving communities and they're recognized in these communities at whatever level. But yes, there are obviously their needs, right? So the potential is there to do more, to do better. But it's not always easy, even for local people to know what this organization is doing and to send them your $10 or your $20. But we're also now beginning to see actually another myth dispelled from our data. So we've done 4 large surveys across the continent, and one of the questions that we've asked in those surveys is, who are your top 4 sources of funding? And consistently, over 50% of the respondents, and some of these surveys have been pretty big, 1,000+ respondents, have indicated that individuals are among the top, the top givers, right? And yes, of course, we know Africans give, but the way our giving is described is often, oh yeah, we give horizontally, I'll help my sister, I'll help my neighbor. But we actually also, supporting organizations that are trying to address some very systemic changes. So we had imagined that most of the organizations that are reporting that they get support from individuals would be working in your sort of bread and butter issues like, access to education. So they're building schools or health. But actually, we find quite a significant percentage who are funding advocacy work, who are funding human rights work. Yeah, so again, the need, again, sort of underlining the need to examine and draw out actually what is actually going on rather than what people imagine is going on. So for investors or funders, you're coming to support something that's already happening. It's to help it get to the next level in terms of scale and in terms of the organizational capacity that's required to sustain and scale the impact that groups are having.
I want to come in a minute. I want you to be thinking about a particular setting or situation that people love stories. So I want you to think about a story that you can share with us today that talks about maybe on a ground level how some of these things really affect people's lives. And then while you're thinking about that, I want to mention something else to you. You talked about African giving. We're now in A Principles is now in India, and I've noticed something similar to in the Indian culture. Is there's this, oh, we give to our family, we give to our neighbors, we give to all these people, and it made me think. It's what I tell people in our own work. The English word philanthropy comes
Yeah,
from
it doesn't
two
mean.
Greek words, and they
Mm-hmm.
are philios and
Mm-hmm.
anthropos.
Mm-hmm.
And philios is brotherly love, and
Mm-hmm.
anthropos is the generic mankind. So then,
Mm-hmm.
when you put them together, literally what the word means is for the love of mankind. Now, do we
Mm-hmm.
see any money in there? Well, no. Now, money's involved, but
Mm-hmm.
that's not what it's about, you see.
Absolutely.
So that
Yeah.
these communities who have this giving culture already, it's very easy to build on
Mhm.
that and show them
Absolutely.
how they can be, how the whole concept can be expanded, and people kind of get
Absolutely.
caught up in the word, but it really means for the love of mankind. That's really what it means.
Absolutely.
It's loving other people, and
Mm-hmm.
what on all that that means, all that that
Mm-hmm.
supplies. So I just wanted to share that with you. So I want to hear a story, Rose. Let's hear a story. I love stories.
Oh gosh, there are many stories, and I'm reminded of just kind of recent stories about organizations that we're interacting with, especially here in Senegal, um, led by young people. So there's this one particular organization that's actually it's a youth-led organization working in one of the poorer neighborhoods in Dakar, and the phenomenon of mental health or mental illness. Mental health is not a problem; it's the illness that's a problem, right? So
I, I
it's
love it, Rose. You go right to the center of the matter.
it's right. It's if you have mental health, you're good. So. Uh, And so they started this initiative of setting up like a hotline where other young people can call in and just talk to someone and
Mhm.
share. It's taboo, I think, across the world, right? Issues of that's perceived as some sort of mental illness. So it's not an issue that's openly spoken about. It's very hidden, and there are hardly any services really
Mhm.
in the country. Forget about in poorer, neighborhood. People don't have access. We don't have, easy access to therapists or even acceptance that you can do that. So this group of the three of them, group of young people, just through their own efforts, through friends, relatives, and their own time, are providing this service with no external or sort of institutional funding, which it's amazing. So the passion, right, and the love. So they're not doing this because somebody gave them a whole bunch of money and go do this. It's really a need that they have identified in a community and are addressing it. So again, lifting up these sorts of efforts that are happening at the community level is really, really important, because often, these community-based organizations, really they're the forefront. I mean, they're in these communities, they're not coming from the outside. And we know that sometimes actually when people come from the outside to try and solve your problem, it often doesn't
Problem
work very
worse.
well. So,
It makes the problem.
yeah,
You make the problem
it
worse,
makes the problem worse. And
no matter how well-meaning it is.
it's often well-meaning, if not always. But people come with their own ideas and impose them like nothing exists here. So, we have to come with this model that often it hasn't worked. I don't know whether it's worked anywhere really.
We're going to fix your problem.
Yes, and we know the answers, and we know that this continues to be a huge issue, and now part of the discourse that's going on in global philanthropy really is how to stop doing that and listen, and let the communities lead, and you follow to support.
So these young people that did this on their own,
Mhm,
I guess they're spending their own money at least at this point,
mhm,
and they're getting
mhm.
started. So where are they today? What's going on? Give us an update.
They want to do more, and so they're not even yet legally registered. And therefore, of course, that obviously, locks them out of, certain types of funding, the more form of funding. So they really need support, first of all, to get some legal status. And in many countries in Africa, it's very difficult and expensive to register a nonprofit.
Really?
Yes. Yes, because
Wow.
the history, I suppose it's a history of the sector whereby governments have often viewed civil society as opposition because you're criticizing the government, you're showing where the government is failing. And so there are very few countries where we have a really enabling environment for organizations to operate. And there are very few sort of services or institutions that then can help groups like this to go through the process or even advocate for an easier process, a simpler process, really to advocate for the sector. And in many ways, we see the work that we're doing as enabling that kind of advocacy for the sector. So infrastructure, right? Like just having the infrastructure to support civil society and philanthropy. Yeah, so they continue to struggle, but you can see potential, but the potential is not like going anywhere, right? So, and they're just one case. I mean, there thousands of organizations like this just in my own little city. So Epic Africa is the lead for Giving Tuesday in Senegal.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and actually we came across this group in 2 years ago when we were doing the Giving Tuesday campaign here, and we wanted to specifically enroll organizations that are led by young people because they're more tech savvy, they're, new issues, and because Giving Tuesday is really mostly like a social media campaign. So we thought that there'll be quick attraction there than if we went to the old traditional, sort of organizations. So they, and we Epic Africa are not in a position to provide all those sorts of supports, the capacity building needed, the hand holding, and so that's another sort of big gap that we see that really undermines the potential for growth of this very nascent but really cutting edge in terms of where they think, the issues they're dealing with, and they're looking forward and addressing particularly issues of young people who are the majority of our populations in our countries, really. Yeah.
So I have a question. See, I'm filling in my gaps about African history and other things. So we're probably what now? We're 3 generations pretty much separated from the colonial period. Do you still have? And are there still things that are sort of vestiges of that are either helping or hurting?
Gosh, yes, a lot. I mean, again, one of the discourses that are ongoing in global philanthropy around decolonizing philanthropy and decolonizing aid. So the mindsets of many philanthropic institutions from outside the continent is still largely colonial. The distrust or mistrust of local organizations, they really don't know how to do it. They can't do it. We are the ones who know. The idea that there's nothing there, so you don't have ideas, or the devaluing of indigenous and local knowledge and input. They're still very, very much alive, and we think play quite a large role in locking out access to financing, some sort of kinds of financing that could be very helpful.
You see, that actually
Mm-hmm.
suppresses growth of indigenous philanthropy is what that does. Because what I tell people is that when you're building a philanthropic enterprise, you're trying to raise money and increase your support. It is an inside out process. I've had, people reach out to me in Africa and others, and they want, okay, so where's the money? Do I go to Bill Gates? Do I do this, do that? I said, no, start with those locally to you. There's potential right there where you are. All right. Maybe you can't see it, but it's there. That when you build it from the inside out, not only do you have a strong sense of identity and you can do it, all right, but then it actually encourages the right kind of outside support. Then the people that would come in and want to sort of, you don't know what you're doing, we'll take over this and we'll get this done, kind of thing. Those people aren't interested because you already have a base from which to work, and you don't have to depend on their advice to get it done. And then you're far less dependent in your thinking as well. So that's what I tell people.
Absolutely. And I think in that the colonial legacies is exactly that, sort of even we undervaluing what we have and not recognize or seeing what's right in front of our eyes, like the generosity that already exists, right? How can you build on that? Because it's there, right?
Yes.
And how can you extend that beyond perhaps the predominant sort of giving, which is, as we said, to relatives, to neighbors and the like. Not to stop that, that's critical, but how can you extend that then to the groups or organizations or movements whose success would actually improve things, so that the daily kind of giving is not necessary and can go to something else.
Yes.
Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So
absolutely.
If you look at oftentimes even the fundraising, and now there's a lot of organizations, trying to teach, African civil society organizations how to fundraise. But if you look at the content, oftentimes, and the framing is around how to write proposals. It's rather than strategic, like just sort of the rethinking, what exists and what resources do I need, and what is in this community that we can before we go outside.
Yes.
What is it that we have that, and what are we looking for to then complement, add to what we have? So Africa, as you know, it's a rich continent. I mean,
oh yes.
And there's, and when people connect to an issue, and it's an issue that touches them, they support it. We see that over. I mean, people on Sunday in church give a lot of money. I don't know how much money is collected on every Sunday across the continent. So why aren't they giving to?
Here's something I want to tell you that won't surprise you, but the studies have been done in this country. Harvard did some. I think they're the ones that do the consistent ones. The number one sociological factor that is determinant on whether someone will be philanthropic or not is whether they're an active member of a church, synagogue, or religion. And when you think about it, that makes sense, because people give because they want to be a part of something bigger than themselves. That's why people give. So the audience that's a faith-based audience already understands that concept. They get it. And so that's why I tell people, in this country, I've told people for years, I think I'd look at the church role before I look at the country club role. All right, let's start with them, and then we'll move out. When those two intersect, that's great, but you really need to be focused on the heart first. And they're the people that are inclined to listen to you and to hear you and to act on it.
Yeah, and so language becomes very important as well, and how we communicate, and how do we frame, or how do organizations frame what they do and why, Larry should be involved in in what I'm doing. And I think that so we tend to use very technical language, that's language often coming from, the donor from the outside, and you can make sense of like, what are you saying? So even the word philanthropy, as you said, I mean, in our context, it's a new word. It's kind of a foreign, the concept, the underlying and the meaning is not.
No.
But that word is
Yeah,
so we also need new language. Yes. I mean, like
concept is there.
everyday language. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. You also mentioned something that limits many of my nonprofit friends, and that is when they communicate, they don't communicate in a language that's personal and human that someone else can understand. They tend to get caught up in technical language, jargon, statistics, and when someone's listening to that and they're interested, that sort of thing, you can just see their eyes just glaze over. Okay, next, because it's not hitting them here where it needs to. Um, and yet it's right there. It's right there.
Yeah.
So,
But
so go ahead.
no, I was just going to say that sometimes also that language, of course, is being imposed by sometimes the requirements, especially when you come to the more institutionalized, formal philanthropic institutions. It's like you have to use certain words, right?
Yeah.
Whether
Well, and
it's
that's
systemic change, or never mind whether you know what it means or not, but throw those words in there, because that's what this is what Larry funds, right? So
well, and
if I
that's
start
why.
telling
Yeah.
the hard stories, it might not, it's
and that's why, as I tell people, the place to start looking is for individuals that are inclined to support you for whatever reason. And they're interested in the human aspect. That's what they're interested in. And organized philanthropy is what it's bureaucratic, it's organized, it's committees, it's having to allocate certain funds. And it's not that those those funds are not something you might want, but number one, there's far less of that than you think there is, as you know, and it's a lot less flexible and a lot less renewable, and can take a lot more effort to achieve. So this is wonderful. I love that what you're telling me, and you're filling this gap. Have you ever thought of being of the organization sort of being a matchmaking organization where you're matching potential donors to potential organizations? Ever thought about doing any of that?
Oh, absolutely. And some of the work that we have done already is doing that. So in the last, I would say in the last 2 years, we've had a few funders commission us to do exactly that. So help us find potential partners that fit this criteria or that are working in this specific area. So indeed, and there's a lot of room to do more of that, especially now that many funders, not yet enough of them, but many institutional funders are interested or moving towards or committing to fund local organizations more directly, rather than, because the way the system is set up now, the architecture of like global philanthropy and aid is most of the funding will go to a northern-based international NGO that will then sub-grant to the local organization, but a good portion of that money stays with the lead organization, the recipient, the direct recipient of that funding. But now more and more we are seeing some movement towards wanting to get more of the resources down to where to the people who are doing the work, actually. So that role of matchmaking, making it easier for resources to flow directly to where they're needed, is definitely one that's missing, and that we ourselves want to get into more and more. And as we grow our database, then, you know, it'll become even easier because we already have these organizations that are already there, that we already know about, that we've already vetted, and therefore it can make it much easier for funders that are looking to shift resources more directly to local organizations to do it more easily and in a more cost-effective, in a more cost-effective way.
You do any work with nonprofit, with your African nonprofits on training or teaching them how to understand this better, to be better fundraisers, to understand the paradigm better? Do you do any development work in that area with these organizations?
Not directly, not directly. What we do is, and what we want to do more of it. I haven't mentioned one of our flagship initiatives, which is a digital platform called the African CSO platform, and one of the offerings of that platform is funding opportunities so that because that's another, you know, issue for local organizations. They don't know who exists out there. How do I find them? They're kind of locked out of that access. So we're making available our funding opportunities. Also, we're making available other content, including, you know, opportunities for training, opportunities for conferences and convenings. So just really bringing resources that most organizations on the continent don't have access to. And organizations that are on our platform also have the ability to share their content, including you know, opportunities that they come across, whether it's training or events that they themselves are organizing. And we're also expecting that as we do more and more of this, organizations will also start to go there to find each other. Like, who else is working in my neighborhood? Who else is working on the issues that I'm also working on? Because there's a lot of fragmentation in the sector. And we think that really weakens the sector because everybody is working sort of solo rather than, so the opportunity to form coalitions, form networks, learn from each other, and that sort of thing does not exist. So no, we are not teaching anyone how to fundraise, but we're certainly, you know, making available those opportunities and collaborating with others to do that as well.
Okay. So let's look ahead, next couple of years. If I come back to you in 2 years, what is a success you'd like to share with me that you haven't?
One is,
you want to do it.
One is that we are going to, our African CSO platform is going to be truly the leading hub for data and knowledge on the African civil society sector. So anybody wanting to connect, to learn about, this will be your first port of call. And as you do that, so that's like one of our immediate goals, to really have as many organizations, as many profiles as possible. Second one, and we are tracking this very closely, is also increasing the number of users of the platform, you know, not just the organizations that are registered in the database, but who else is coming to get information. So we're tracking metrics like, you know, number of users, what are they engaging in? And we're seeing really interesting insights that articles on the platform, because we're working with, we have invited civil society organizations to post articles. Individuals can also do that. Of course, we have a whole editorial policy and what have you, and people are really engaging with those articles. I mean, the average engagement time on the platform right now is about 4.5 minutes, which is a lot of time.
Yes, it
so
is.
there's a hunger. I mean, there's a hunger. People are looking for, for information, and
let's don't
that's coming from.
let's don't run past that. You said that the mean visitor stays on your website 4.5 minutes. Did I get that right?
Yep.
All right. That is exceptionally long in the internet world.
Yep.
All right. I want to
Yep.
point that out to our listeners and our viewers.
Mm-hmm.
That's what, at least 4 times the mean, at least. I mean, we're talking seconds when it comes to websites.
Yeah, people spend seconds. I mean, oh, absolutely, absolutely. So there's something of value that people are perceiving, and so we want to respond to that demand. That's where we want to be in. That's where we want to be in 2 years. That.
So,
Yeah.
so Rose, when's the book coming out? When are you writing your book?
Oh boy, I don't know. One of these days, probably. I mean, we're very serious about documenting what we are learning, and I would love to be able to produce more in terms of thought pieces and maybe a book, because because we're learning a lot of really important stuff that's not out there, that's not known. Yeah, so it's coming. It's but I need the time and I need the space to be able to think, and as a young organization that's also are undergoing through some of the challenges that the CSOs that we're serving also do, which is under resourcing. We are looking for more investment so that we can have enough capacity. And here for us, capacity is really people to do the work. People with the right level of experience and skills to do the work, so that my role can then become much more around thought leadership and those sorts of things. So like many nonprofit CEOs, I'm overworked and and wear 20 hats, in one day, right?
Yes, yes. So if people wanted to go to your website, it would be epic-africa.org. Is that correct?
That's it. That's absolutely it. Yeah.
Epic-africa.org. And Epic is
Yes.
spelled EPIC.
Mhm.
Right. So is this your brainchild? Was this your idea, Rose?
Yes and no. Started off with a co-founder, actually, who was a colleague before we jumped off to set up Epic Africa. But as you can imagine, trying to start up, especially the nature of work that we're doing, we're not dealing with the sort of single issues that funders tend to fund. We're building infrastructure, right? It's a public good, and no one likes funding public goods. Everyone enjoys it once the road is done. We're all happy, but no one wants to fund it. So it was not easy getting startup capital at all. So worked for many years just based on our own resources and volunteers, and just a lot of friends doing pro bono stuff for us, until COVID. Actually, for COVID was sort of a turning point for us, because in the early days, if you remember, like April of 2020, thereabouts, there was actually international travel had kind of come to a standstill, even local travel, like, we couldn't go across regions and counties. And we did a survey just to see what was the impact of COVID-19 on African CSOs. And we published a report in June of 2020, and I think that report landed at a time when many funders were wondering, what is going on? How do we support our partners on the ground? And so that sort of brought a lot of attention and visibility to the work we're doing. And as debates about decolonization and shifting power and all these debates have gained traction. Now the need for infrastructure has become very obvious, and need for a local infrastructure to facilitate whether it's the organizations that are looking to meet certain commitments around diversity and inclusion and all that. And now suddenly, wow, how do we do it? Where do we find this organization? How do so finally our work began to make sense, I think, to many funders who didn't really, they thought it was a nice thing. I mean, but it wasn't really crucial to their work.
No,
But if you think of the US, where the philanthropic field is perhaps much more developed. I mean, it's a whole industry, right, of service providers,
oh yes,
groups, a lot of independent groups like yourself, who is, just
yeah.
doing, fundraising, and you're serving, the sector, which that infrastructure is very, very weak. So we have an ecosystem that's kind of very broken, right? Missing a lot of pieces for the whole. So that's where we're situated, and it's not a it's not a space that speaks to the heart of many people.
It's
uh, uh,
we say in the U.S. it's not very sexy. All right, it's not.
It's not, and it's hard to photograph. It's like the plumbing in the wall,
Mhm.
but if your kitchen sink is not working, then that's a problem, right? You don't
Sure,
realize, oh,
that's right.
there was, right? Oh, there was that pipe. We have to break to get to that pipe, because it's not visible,
I,
but it's crucial.
I like
It's
that.
it's
I like that
mm,
analogy because
mm,
if it's working, you're looking at the beautiful sink and the faucet and all the fixtures around it. But if it's not
mhm,
working, well, it's
mhm.
the pipes in the wall or something that's not working,
That's
and
right.
it's
Yeah.
something you don't usually see or look at. I like that, Rose. I really do. You're giving me great ideas for analogies I can use. I like that very much.
Well, there you go. Yes, but it's so again, some of the perceived weaknesses or gaps in among African CSOs, whether it's being able to comply with the requirements from a funder, and it's not because they may not want to, but if you're comparing with an organization that's supported by an ecosystem where you can get help from and expertise from different people, it's quite different if you're trying to figure it by yourself. Like where can I go right now for someone to explain to me what does this US government requirements mean so I can apply for this grant, right? That yeah, so that's I think plays a big role. It's not the only reason, but certainly contributes to the state of the sector. Even the idea of like this being able to demonstrate your impact. Again, oftentimes, you would have experts, whether they're firms or individuals, that can help you to do that, work with you to do that. Um, but like I said, it's not always easy to access, to find, and when you do find, to be able to pay for those sorts of services. So you're caught in this sort of vicious cycle, because you don't have this, you can't do that, and because you can't do that, then you can't have this, and uh,
That's
so we
another.
think infrastructure.
I'm going to get on my soapbox here for 10 seconds. That's another reason why
Mhm,
it's important to build from the inside out. So by the
mhm,
time you get to the point where
mhm, mhm,
any kind of significant funds come from outside your community, you already have
mhm,
enough of an infrastructure to get
mhm,
their attention. All right,
mhm.
you don't go in as their stepchild. All right,
No,
that's the key, is you don't do that.
no,
Um,
no.
uh, you know, is there anything that I haven't covered that you'd like to say?
Wow. Yeah, so if there was anything that I'd like to say, maybe it's more a question. um, like, how, if you had to give, one piece of, advice in terms of being able to attract not just investment, but the right kind of investment, which is long-term, flexible, because the situation is constantly changing on the ground. What would that be?
Oh, well, see, you've queued me up, Rose. And by the way, everyone, this is not a setup for a promo. You actually asked this question. All right, good. This kind of comes at me unexpected. A couple of things. First of all, wherever people are, human nature is amazingly consistent. Across the world, across cultures, people have the same basic motives for doing what they do. All right. And whether it's, no matter, and that's one reason why when we were asked to go into India, I knew that it would work there, because the approach that we take with people is it's built on the universality of human nature. And so let's make that assumption for a moment. All right. And then if you're good with that, then historically, the way you look at how organizations grow and survive that are built on this model, they start with, of course, an idea and a need and a core group of people that want to see it real. All right, that's where it starts. Okay, like your young people who want to provide some mental health, help, and from that, when it becomes organized in some way, and I'm using that word very loosely, then that's when there has to be what I would call an inside out energy, right? Not outside in, which is so common among communities where they feel they don't have anything. All right. That's the wrong. You want inside out. I'm going to diverge here for 1 minute. This will be the second year that we've participated in what they call the 1 Million Leaders Program by Omlis Nellis Foundation. And it's all through Africa and Southeast Asia. And these are young people that they've identified who have leadership potential. This foundation's out of Japan, of all places, but that's where it is. And they want to build this core of 1 million leaders, and they're looking at young people on how to do that in their own communities. And they approached me over a year ago and said, can you provide the fundraising component for our training? Well, right away, I said, okay, let me be clear what I'm going to tell these young people. All right. If they're looking for how to apply for grants to the large international foundations, I'm not who you need to talk to. All right. However, if they want to learn how to do it from the inside out, how to raise funds from their own communities, however modest that might be, and move in that direction, you're talking to the right place. So then these young people, what I tell them is what I'm going to tell you, and that is, if you're at an organizational stage, I mean, these are individuals now, they're just starting on their own. They're like 19, 20, 21, very young people. All right. I still think that's young. All right. So anyway, you start with the idea that you raise money amongst yourselves, however modest that might be. At this point, it's not about the amount, it's about the commitment. And if you show that, and then when you're formal, you have a governing board that supports that financially to a commensurate level, whatever that is, that is something that you can take, and it creates energy going inside out, so that those networks build on themselves. There's always a link to the inside from those networks, so that, for instance, if I'm really supporting something, or you're really supporting something financially, and I know you, and you come to me, Larry, I've got something I'd like to share with you. Here's this organization that I support. I love it. It does great work. Would you join me in doing that? Well, first of all, I know who you are, and I respect you.
So trust, yes.
There's trust there. And then the calculation I'm doing in my head is, oh, well, if Rose is supporting this financially, and I know sort of what her means are, and this is what she's doing, I should be a part of that too. This is how this works, you see. So it's a series of concentric circles is how it's created. That's the dynamic. There are lots of little bells and whistles that make it work better, but that's the essential dynamic. And by the way, that is principle 5 of the 8 principles: work from the inside out. All right. Principle 1 is donors are the drivers. They are the driving energy in the philanthropic enterprise. And this is something that many nonprofits have trouble with because they think they're so well-minded and doing such great thing that they're the drivers. Well, no, you're not. Now, you're the conduit for achieving great work. You see, you're the conduit. And sometimes I'll say, Rose, God save me from nice people. All right. Because they're so well motivated, they don't understand that they really need to partner with another group, people who have funds and energy and connections to make this work. You see, it's 2 parties coming together to accomplish something that neither of you can do alone. You see, and if you can create an experience, and we're getting into some technicalities here, but if you create an experience, however you want to define that word, that your investors can't purchase, you see, you will never have any issues with money. They will continue to fund you and fund you. That is, if you continue to engage them. You don't treat them like, anytime tellers or checkbooks. I mean, no one wants to be treated like a checkbook. No one wants to do that. I mean, I have a business coach. He's in Britain, and he said to me, Larry, he's an Australian living in Britain. I can't imitate his accent very well, but he said, there was this one organization I really wanted to support, and I gave them a nice gift, and I didn't hear anything for 4 months until they asked me for another damn gift. And then another 4 months, they never said thank you or anything. And finally, I just gave up. You see, when you start taking those people like that for granted, you see. So that's in fact, that's the whole basis of what we do with organizations is we help them align their culture to understand this, because it's not just the fundraiser that should be involved in fundraising. It's working and building partnerships. So that, for instance, if I just happen to know somebody in the community that works for you, they're telling what great things you're doing. You see, they're fundraising when they're not fundraising. You see what they're doing there? And so that's the key. That's what I tell people, and that's the training program, the platform that we have. That's what it teaches. And we've done it. I'm pretty proud of it. It's built on the Covey leadership model, if you're familiar with Stephen Covey's work. And it is really geared to adult learning. It's not sitting in a classroom listening to someone talk to boring slides. No, no, no. It is interactive. It can be done with small groups, big groups, small organizations, big organizations. And why? Because it goes back to that universality of human nature. That's what we're focusing on. And once the organization has the alignment inside, you can accomplish incredible things. And that's why one of the ways we provide the platform is actually put it inside of an organization. We'll train someone that's inside to deliver the coaching and deliver the live sessions repetitively, so that when there's new people, everything, okay, this is our culture. This is how we do things. And one last thing. See, you set me off here with that question, Rose. And that is.
No, I'm loving it here. I'm liking it because this can take what you're saying and share with, other organizations. Yeah, so great.
So the whole concept of continuous learning, meaning having a core curriculum that you're teaching over and over and over inside an organization, is something that's pretty common in the for-profit world, in the corporate world. They don't spend a lot of money going here, there, and everywhere. They get something they like, they bring it inside. Well, it's not that common in the nonprofit community, at least not yet. But we are the only continuous learning platform that's out there, especially anything that teaches organizational alignment in this area, because everyone's a fundraiser, whether they think they are or not. The question is, what's your role? And people think fundraising is asking for money. Well, that's about 2% of the whole package. So that's what we do. That's what we do, Rose. So
great.
I want to thank you. This has been delightful. And ladies and gentlemen, she didn't set me up on this. I want to say it again. It was her own initiative. But I love talking about this and very passionate about it. Rose, if people wanted to contact you, how would they do that?
Well, they can go to our website. As I said, there's a contact there, but my personal organizational email is R, like Rose, Maruru, Maruru, at epic-africa.org.
You can't get any more straightforward than that. All right. Thank you. This has been truly a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
For sure, we'll come back once you've written that book. Okay. I'm going to give you a motive to do that. As it's a book, it's going to be a book worth reading. I know. All right. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being with us today. And we're going to have another episode soon, but I want to thank Rose again. Thank you very much, Rose. And until that time, be good.